Belief has always walked beside humanity. Before gods were named, before sacred texts were written, before empires rose and collapsed, there were questions. We etched them into stone, sang them into the night, and carried them with us into the grave. Myth did not begin as story, it began as survival. And it has never stopped changing. The earliest signs of belief are not found in temples or scriptures, but in quiet acts of meaning. Stones placed with care, bones shaped into figures, animals painted far beneath the earth's surface. These were not decorations. They were offerings, symbols and memories, evidence of a world alive with unseen forces. In this earliest age, myth and life were inseparable. In southeastern Turkey, massive stone pillars rise from the earth in precise circular formations. Carved with foxes, vultures, lions, scorpions, and serpents, Göbekli Tepe stands more than 11,000 years old. There are no homes here, no farms, no evidence of permanent settlement. Only monuments, animal remains, and symbolism. The people who gathered here came not to live, but to believe. Göbekli Tepe reveals something profound. Faith did not follow civilization. Civilization followed faith. Across the Paleolithic and Neolithic world, humans understood reality as alive. Trees listened, rivers remembered, wind carried intention. This worldview is now called animism, not a religion of temples and gods, but a way of seeing existence as filled with presence. Nothing was empty. A forest was a being. An animal held wisdom. A stone could hear. Life was relationship between humans, spirits, ancestors, and the land itself. Death was not an ending, but a continuation. The dead were laid into the earth with care, wrapped in ochre, shells, tools, and ornaments. Ancestors remained present, guiding the living through memory and ritual. Shamans became the bridge between worlds. Through trance, rhythm, smoke, and song, they crossed beyond the visible. They returned with healing, knowledge, and protection. Their role shaped entire communities, and echoes of their practice survive in cultures across the world today. Deep inside the caves of Lascaux, animals surge across stone walls, horses, bulls, stags, painted where darkness swallows sound and torchlight makes them move. These were not casual images. They were placed where echoes linger, where breath fogs the air, where ritual became experience. Across Eurasia, small carved figures appear again and again, rounded forms shaped from ivory, bone, and stone. Today we call them Venus figurines. They emphasize fertility, birth, and continuity. Their widespread presence reveals shared symbols across vast distances, a collective language of belief. This chapter of humanity was built on connection. People lived with the world, not above it. The sacred flowed through soil, sky, flame, and memory. And even now, in silence, those voices remain. Across the Aegean, early Greek belief took shape within powerful civilizations. On the island of Crete, the Minoans created a world alive with color and movement. Their frescoes show women in positions of authority, nature spirits in motion, and goddesses holding serpents, symbols of renewal, protection, and the living earth. Their palaces were built around open courtyards rather than fortified walls, and at the heart of their rituals stood the sacred bull. This was a culture attuned to fertility, animal vitality, and the rhythms of the seasons. After them came the Mycenaeans, bringing a more martial spirit and a new divine order. Clay tablets written in Linear B record names that would later echo through Greek epic. Zeus, Poseidon, Hera, and Potnia, the lady. Potnia appears as a powerful and ambiguous figure, a mistress of animals, a huntress, a goddess of the wild, perhaps even a ruler in her own right. These gods were not yet distant Olympians. They were immediate, local, and deeply bound to the land. This was the moment belief entered the historical record. Gods now lived in writing, in stone, in temples and monuments that still stand. Myth shaped calendars, laws, and visions of the soul's fate after death. From clay and stone, the sacred took root, and entire civilizations grew around it. As kingdoms expanded and oral traditions were committed to writing, belief deepened. Gods no longer belonged only to a single city or tribe. They began to shape cultures, philosophies, and empires. Stories hardened into scripture. Priests became philosophers, and faith became identity. On the Indian subcontinent, the Vedic tradition crystallized. The Rig Veda, one of the oldest religious texts still in use, was composed during this era. Its hymns describe a universe alive with divine forces, each god an expression of cosmic truth. Indra, wielder of thunder, slays the serpent Vritra and releases the life-giving waters. Agni, the sacred fire, carries offerings between heaven and earth. Varuna upholds moral order and cosmic law. These gods were honored through precise rituals performed by priests who understood sound, fire, and rhythm as tools of alignment between humanity and the divine. This was a religion of spoken power, knowledge memorized, recited, and preserved for generations long before it was written. To the West, the Greeks shaped their myths into stories that still resonate across the world. The Olympian gods took form atop Mount Olympus, Zeus with thunder in hand, Hera bearing the weight of queenship, Athena born from thought itself. Their rivalries, alliances, and betrayals formed a divine court that mirrored human society. Through Homer's epics, the Iliad and the Odyssey, myth became performance. Tales of war, pride, deception, and longing were spoken in public squares and sung at festivals. City cults flourished: Apollo at Delphi, Artemis at Ephesus, Demeter at Eleusis. Temples were not only places of worship, but centers of civic identity and pride. Oracles spoke the will of the gods. Mystery cults promised transformation through initiation. In Persia, a radically different vision emerged through the teachings of Zoroaster. At its center stood Ahura Mazda, god of wisdom, light, and truth. Opposing him was Angra Mainyu, spirit of destruction and falsehood. This was not a myth of chaos alone, but a moral universe defined by choice. Humanity was not passive in this struggle. Through right thought, right word, and right action, each person helped push creation toward truth. Fire, ever living and pure, burned in temples as a symbol of the divine spark. These teachings were preserved in the Avesta, offering a moral structure where every decision carried cosmic weight. In the hills and deserts of the Levant, another path unfolded. Among the Israelites, devotion to Yahweh moved toward exclusivity. This shift laid the foundations of monotheism. Stories of creation, covenant, exile, and return were recorded and refined. The Torah took form, offering laws, histories, genealogies, and a vision of a people bound to their God. Festivals marked time, sacrifices sanctified space, and the temple in Jerusalem became the heart of worship. Here, myth, law, and identity were woven into a single thread. In the forests and fjords of northern Europe, early Norse and Germanic peoples preserved their stories through memory and song. Their gods feasted and fought, shaped the world from the body of giants, and faced their fate at the end of time. Odin, who sacrificed himself for knowledge. Thor, defender of the realm with hammer in hand. And the great world tree, Yggdrasil, binding gods, humans, giants, and the dead. Though written down centuries later, these myths lived in ritual, poetry, and the turning of seasons. Across the Celtic world, the sacred flowed through the land itself. Groves, rivers, and stones held power. Druids, keepers of law and memory, led rituals and preserved myth through speech alone. Their gods ruled over sovereignty, fertility, storm, and hunt. Time moved in cycles marked by festivals like Samhain and Beltane, when the veil between worlds grew thin and the dead drew near. In Italy, early Roman religion focused not on mythic drama, but on precision. Every place and action held a spirit. Numen. Household gods protected family and food. Vesta's sacred fire burned at the heart of the state. Ritual was a contract. Speak the words correctly. Perform the act precisely. Honor the gods, and the gods would uphold Rome. This era expanded the horizon of faith. Gods changed form. Humanity redefined its place in the cosmos. Myth became more than story. It became civilization. Then, across distant lands with little contact, a profound turning point emerged. People began asking the same questions. What is suffering? How should we live? What does it mean to be free? This was not an age of gods waging war in the heavens. It was an age of reflection. Belief turned inward. Myth gave way to moral vision. The Analects preserved conversations that would guide Chinese civilization for centuries, placing moral responsibility at the center of human life. Confucius taught that harmony began with conduct, between ruler and subject, parent and child, elder and youth. Ritual was not empty ceremony, but a way to shape virtue and sustain order. Alongside this moral vision flowed another path, quieter and less defined. Laozi, author of the Tao Te Ching, spoke of the Tao, the way that underlies all things. It moved through wind and water, growth and decay, without force or intention. To follow it was to live simply, act without struggle, and find strength in softness. This understanding became Taoism, a philosophy of balance, humility, and alignment with nature. In the lands of ancient Israel, prophetic voices rose in times of crisis. Isaiah, Amos, and Jeremiah confronted kings and challenged injustice, calling their people back to covenant and moral accountability. God was no longer seen only as a giver of law, but as a presence demanding compassion for the poor, the displaced, and the vulnerable. Faith became inseparable from ethics. In Greece, thought turned toward reason. Socrates questioned assumptions, guiding others through dialogue rather than instruction. Plato imagined eternal truths beyond the physical world, while Aristotle sought order through observation, logic, and ethics. Together, they shaped philosophy as a path toward understanding reality beyond myth. Yet myth did not fade away. It adapted. Across the ancient world, mystery religions offered personal transformation rather than public worship. In the Eleusinian mysteries, initiates reenacted the cycle of loss and returned through the story of Demeter and Persephone, finding hope beyond death. Orphic traditions taught that the soul was divine but bound to the body, seeking release through purification and sacred insight. These rites were secret, intimate, and deeply personal. Far from cities and schools, older traditions continued. In the forests of Siberia, the plains of Central Asia, and the mountains of the Americas, shamans remained mediators between worlds. Through trance, song, and ritual, they restored balance, healed illness, and communicated with ancestral spirits. While philosophers debated truth, these traditions preserved humanity's relationship with the unseen. The Axial Age was not a single event, but a turning inward. Across deserts, courts, temples, and wilderness, people sought meaning beyond ritual alone. Belief shifted from mythic storytelling to ethical reflection, reshaping how humans understood themselves in the cosmos. As empires expanded and trade routes connected distant regions, religious ideas began to travel widely. Deities crossed borders. Beliefs blended. Traditions adapted to new cultures and growing populations. This was an age of renewal, where old paths were reimagined and new faiths took form. Within the Roman Empire, religion became fluid and inclusive. Roman gods such as Jupiter, Mars, and Venus absorbed the traits of Greek deities like Zeus, Ares, and Aphrodite. This blending, known as syncretism, allowed local gods to be honored within a shared imperial framework. Amid this diversity, mystery cults flourished. The worship of Isis, Egyptian goddess of magic and protection, spread through Roman cities, promising healing and guidance. The cult of Mithras, influenced by Persian thought, drew soldiers with its secret initiations and symbolic rituals, centered on a life-giving sacrifice. In the eastern reaches of the empire, a new movement quietly emerged. Christianity began in the 1st century CE, shaped by the life and teachings of Jesus of Nazareth. His message of love, justice, and redemption spread through storytelling and letters. Communities formed in homes, bound by shared meals and hope of resurrection. Despite persecution, the faith grew. By the 4th century, Emperor Constantine legalized Christianity, and it soon became the religion of empire. Churches replaced temples. Councils defined belief. What began as a small movement reshaped the spiritual future of Europe. In South Asia, ancient traditions continued to evolve. Buddhism, long established, spread beyond India through monks and pilgrims, reaching Sri Lanka, Central Asia, and East Asia. Two major paths emerged: Theravada, emphasizing discipline and meditation, and Mahayana, which taught compassion and enlightenment for all beings. At the same time, Hinduism entered a classical age. The epics, the Mahabharata and Maya, wove together myth, philosophy, and social duty. The Bhagavad Gita explored devotion, action, and the nature of the self. This era emphasized bhakti, a personal bond with the divine. Temples became centers of daily life, where gods were approached as living presences. In Persia, the prophet Mani introduced Manichaeism, a faith that combined elements of Zoroastrianism, Christianity, and Buddhism. It described the universe as a struggle between light and darkness, with human souls caught between the two. Through knowledge and discipline, the soul could return to its source. Though the religion faded, its ideas influenced later mystical traditions. Across the world, belief no longer remained fixed. It moved with soldiers, traders, and pilgrims. It shaped laws, empires, and identities. And through that movement, the sacred found new voices. In the 7th century, another transformation unfolded. Islam arose through the revelations received by the Prophet Muhammad in Arabia. Recorded in the Quran, these teachings emphasized the unity of God, justice, mercy, and submission to divine will. Within generations, Islam spread across North Africa, Spain, Central Asia, and South Asia. Mosques became centers of worship and learning. Pilgrimage connected believers across continents. Islamic civilizations advanced scholarship in science, medicine, philosophy, and theology. Meanwhile, Christianity continued to shape Europe. As the Western Roman Empire collapsed, the Church provided structure through monasteries, cathedrals, and education. Older pagan practices were absorbed and transformed. Sacred sites were reinterpreted, and saints took on roles once held by local gods. From Celtic forests to Norse lands, belief adapted. Western Europe unified under Latin Christianity, while Eastern Orthodoxy flourished in Byzantium. Across Asia, Buddhism and Hinduism remained vibrant. Theravada Buddhism thrived in Southeast Asia, while Mahayana spread through China, Korea, and Japan, emphasizing compassion and the aid of enlightened beings. Across all cultures and centuries, belief endured, changing shape, crossing borders, and continuing to guide humanity's search for meaning.